Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Revenue Optimists. We're a space where revenue operations leaders and go-to-market folks come together to learn from one another so they can grow their businesses. My name is Dave Nelson, and today I'm very fortunate to be joined by George Samaras, who's the Director of Marketing Operations and Technology at Coveo. George, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me here.
Do you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little background on myself. I've been in the marketing operations space now for about 9.5 years now. So almost at my decade in the space. I started working in MOPS for Oracle, working in the Eloqua support team based in Toronto. I was there for about just over 2.5 years, moving in different roles within the support org, moving to escalations and then technical account management. Before I decided I want to learn a little bit more about MOPS on the business side and less on the technical side. And so I ventured into working client side with Ceridian. I worked there for about just over 3.5 years, starting as a specialist doing kind of, typical marketing operations and campaign operations support, and then working my way up to an associate manager role. Week 2 into the pandemic, so we're thinking the third week of March, I ended up joining Coveo, and
Okay.
after interviewing in person with them right before everything shut down.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd time, but yeah, I joined them, and so I think I was their first employee to start during the pandemic. Like, even though I was a remote employee, I was supposed to go to Montreal to pick up my equipment. Everything shipped, and I started completely virtually. And yeah, so I've been at Coveo ever since. I've been now at Coveo for about 3.5 years. I started off as the marketing operations manager, filling a vacancy in the role, and I've now worked my way up to the director of marketing operations and technology, owning obviously the entire marketing operations team, but also the marketing technology stack at Coveo.
Wow, fantastic. Congratulations. And
Thank
and
you.
that sounds like quite the journey. So you've really kind of seen it all from the vendor side at Oracle and Eloqua, and probably being an expert in, I would guess, marketing automation, being there and being the customer success team, but now owning that on the client side too.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see both sides of the dynamic. It's definitely a change, but it really puts a bit of like a humanization to some of the technical issues we got, understanding why we were getting these issues at the Eloqua support and how it's impacting our customers' business. So very insightful.
When you're setting up your ABM campaign, how are you approaching that? Because I would imagine that there's going to be people at different accounts that are all in this campaign that are at different spots in that journey, in that funnel.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that's really like where we give a bit more creative control to our demand gen marketers. So we'll be like, hey, like if you're running we'll say what's one I've participated in, they'll do like a taco night or something like that, where you have like a small virtual event, you got to make tacos over Zoom, and we discuss in the marketing case, we'll discuss marketing automation, which is pretty cool. So if we were doing something like that, typically it'll be the demand gen marketer will go and typically identify the accounts and look at the buying stages. They're not as religious on the buying stage as they are more on the ICP and the fit. So the big thing we want to do is make sure that we have the right people in the room who understand each other. So what we'll typically want to do is we'll have someone who's, say for example, we're going after enterprise accounts who are all in the same industry. They'll have a very similar use case for our tool. So they'll have like, hey, like we're selling for service. Say we're going after software companies who have service. You'd be like, hey, your employees in your contact center, a lot of them are remote right now. And during COVID, this was like really great for our business. Was we had a lot of contact center employees who were remote. So I couldn't wheel over and ask my manager or one of my colleagues a question about the platform. I need something where I can search like a high-powered wiki, pretty much, where I can get information like this. Think of how we use GPT today, right? Like GPT is kind of like the next phase of Google. It's really like, you ask it a question, it gets you an answer. I don't need to click a few links and scroll and extract what I'm looking for. We wanted something like that, but like more for intranet. So more for like specific tools or specific products, things that are not public on the internet. And so what we'll typically do is get like-minded individuals, we'll say like, individuals who are in similar industries, have a similar use case or a similar need in their business. And we keep it collaborative. And what we typically do as well is we'll also bring someone who is either a partner of ours who implements Coveo to talk about the benefits, how it's helped the customers improve, or even a customer who's become kind of like an advocate for us, one who's uses Coveo, very happy with Coveo, and is happy to tell their customers like, hey, I run this software company, my support reps were remote. Here's what it helped me. It helped me, we were able to close our cases before and after Coveo. We had, maybe a 7x improvement in closing our cases because information was easier to access. It wasn't chaotic, with reps slacking each other or calling each other and not being able to close tickets. So we really try to show that, and we try to, like I said, bring similar use cases together, and that's really where we hand tailor the accounts. So we use a lot of a bit of buying stage, but a lot of industry, a lot of revenue, really trying to see which accounts are like-minded.
Interesting. Okay. And so then in saying that, so you found these accounts that are like-minded. Are these accounts that you're trying to get into a combined event so they're collaborating together? Or are these accounts that you've seen in the past? One has gone through a successful ABM campaign, and this one's very much a lookalike of that first one. And so now we're going to put the second one through this similar ABM campaign.
We'll typically do that. So we obviously don't want to repeat things unless there's like someone new at the account that we might want to engage with. But typically if we have someone we've already tried this with, this should be enough progress. I can't say we've gotten to a point, like I don't think we have repeat people coming to our smaller events and things like that. But we'll typically try to find new people at the accounts. Or new accounts. We have like a ton of accounts we're going after. So it's not like, and we try to keep these events small. It's not like we want to have a taco night with like 50 people in there. It's going to be way too much. We want to keep it in the single digits. So
are you trying to have then existing customers join as well, so that you can have the people who have already purchased and they can tell the benefits of Coveo, talking to these folks that are lookalikes and you're in the buying cycle with?
Exactly. That's it. And like some of our customers, like one thing we're very fortunate with is a lot of our customers, like when they love Coveo, they really love Coveo. So they'll, not only are they happy to chat about it, but if they ever move to another company, they'll bring it with them. That'll be one of the first things they'll go and implement. So we really kind of take care of our customer advocates, because they know and understand intrinsically the value of Coveo because they've used the tool. So.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so then that to me sounds like it's a little bit further down the funnel. How are you getting them in to begin with, like at the top of the funnel, but getting them into one of these ABM campaigns?
Great question. So for there, we have a couple of options. So we have right now, our SDRs are free. So we've split our business development team into SDRs and BDs. Our SDRs are more focused on outbounding to like accounts in their patch. So they'll typically be paired up with an AE, and they'll spend some time with ABM accounts. They'll spend some time with non-ABM accounts, and they'll go after them. So that's the outbounding piece. On the inbound side, we have the ABM targeted accounts. What we'll typically do is we'll build personas of what we're going after. So for example, going back to that service example, I'm looking for accounts that maybe you're making, I don't know, we'll say more than $1 billion in revenue a year. They work in software, so they obviously have a need for support and service. And let's say, and obviously they're not customers. And then we're looking at people who are like directors of customer support or VPs of customer support, senior people. We'll go and try to target those personas through our ad platforms. So we'll try, obviously like email's only good if you're in our database, but we'll try to get these people through our ad platforms. We'll also try to get them through a few other sources as well. But a lot of times it's typically to get from top of the funnel, we're either loading them because sales is outbounding to them, or we're getting them through SEO or PPC, one of those sources. And then once they're in, then we can start nurturing them and really tailoring the experience for them.
Okay, that's awesome. And so how do you operationalize that? Like I can imagine that will impact kind of how you're tying it to data, how you're then routing the leads, and how you're responding to them.
Yeah, great question. So on the outbound side, our SDRs, they use outreach. They'll go into outreach. They have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Like, I found this person ABC at account XYZ. We'll bring them in. They'll create them as a person. And then from there, they'll begin their outbounding. Now, that doesn't mean they're MQLing or they're only assigned to them because they're in their cadence. But otherwise, like, they're in our database. Now, on the flip side, for example, if we're talking more on the inbound side, so say someone comes in from a LinkedIn ad that we didn't know who before, or content syndication or something like that, we'll typically wait to see if they've completed an MQL activity, which we try to do. So like typically for bringing someone in through LinkedIn, we're trying to get them to book a meeting, watch a demo, things like that. And then from there, we know they're sales ready. If someone's raising their hand being like, I want to see how your product works, well, we're not going to leave them by themselves. We're going to have them talking to someone. So, and that's where, and so that's where typically they'll come in. We have them MQL, and then from there, Traction helps us with our, with our lead routing. So we'll typically say, hey, this lead MQL'd, they're owned by, this is their LOB. They go to this BDE, for example, and then the BDE will take it and then work the lead from there.
Nice. And how often are you finding that leads will come in like that, where you already have that account? So if they're working for Acmeco or whatever, that Acmeco is already in this kind of ABM campaign. And does that affect that routing at all? Like, are you sending it to then someone else instead of the SDR, or?
Not at all. So they will come in. Traction does its match like it normally would. If it's an ABM targeted account, the BDE will either outbound to them if they feel that, the SDR might not have enough time, or if like the touch might be low enough. So like, for example, if they attended a webinar, like registered and attended a webinar, or like on-demand webinar, I don't know if that's ready for an SDR outbound yet, but it's something we want to surface to sales, and the BD might handle it. But if it's something high intent, typically the SDR will go and grab it. So they'll grab it from the BD and then work as part of that ABM account. So we kind of have like different tiering levels of, inbound versus outbound, but it's not black and white, so sometimes there are some things that are inbound where it's like, hey, maybe we should pass it to the SDR. ABM is a perfect example. And like I said, without Traction being able to like make that linkage and automatically route it, be stuck having someone manually be doing this if we weren't able to automate it. So.
Okay, that's great. And so I can imagine that you're going after both leads and contacts for these campaigns. I know Marketo probably treats them as one and the same. In your CRM, they're not. Is there any operational tips or tricks you'd recommend for treating them as one when you're kind of trying to drive them down the funnel?
That's very organization specific, I would say. And it's a topic that's coming up a lot with us. Like obviously, I know Salesforce recommends always creating, they recommend purposefully creating duplicates. So the idea is you get a lead, and then the lead gets worked by sales, and they get converted into the existing contact or converted into a new contact, depending if they're new or not new. On our end, we treat them as separate objects, and typically someone will get converted to a contact when an opportunity is ready, or things like that. So obviously we have a lot more leads floating around in our database than contacts. But as a conversation we're having, like right now, it's like one challenge we have, for example, is we use like Gainsight for our CS Ops tool. And so Gainsight doesn't read leads. It only understands contacts. So for example, now when we have leads coming in that are linked to customer contacts, our CS Ops team or CSMs are not seeing it through Gainsight. So our CS Ops team has asked, hey, could we auto convert? And that's something that we can do with Traction. And it's a discussion we're having today. But going back to your initial question about like how to treat them, it's really the luxury of having Marketo is that there's no discrimination. It doesn't understand it does, but like very limited the difference between leads and contacts. It treats it as a person, which is great. The key is to make sure that you're able to make that linkage to the account and have those account fields populated back to the lead so you can segment off of them in Marketo. That's really the key. As long as you're doing that, you're still able to pull your lists as though they were one object. You wouldn't notice a difference in Marketo.
Okay, nice. And you talked about a couple of things. You talked about top of funnel, and then you talked about some of the kind of, I would argue, mid funnel activities, the taco building night kind of thing. As you progress down the funnel, any other tips or tricks you recommend for operationalizing it as you're kind of moving them closer and closer to the either opportunity creation or to close?
I would say when they get closer to the opportunity, I would, or like, getting closer, like, an opportunity has already presented itself. You really just want to make sure that the contact roles are bulletproof. Like I said, we have our automation in place that does it. But I'm always a big fan of just reviewing everything that happens once the opportunity is created, like make sure the fields are good. So for us, like, like I mentioned on our ABM team, like their KPIs can be a few different things. It's like, how many accounts did you make as a 6QA, which is our version, 6 Senses version of an MQL, but at the account level. So how many accounts did you make as a 6QA? How many accounts did you move into a buying stage? how many accounts did you book meetings with, how many created opportunities. You want to make sure that those data points are bulletproof. And that's, the line blurs a little between marketing ops and sales ops, because sales ops historically is responsible for reviewing opportunities and making sure the data makes sense on them. But this is where marketing can sometimes go in and be like, hey, you know what, let's just make sure, at least on the ABM side and on the marketing side, our ducks are in a row. Where you can automate it, like I mentioned with the contact role creation, that will save you tons of time. But on the flip side as well, it's still always good to review it. Like a big thing we have, like the primary campaign source, which is like a default field on the opportunity in Salesforce, making sure that populates correctly. If there's, so like one thing we do is every Friday, so later today, we'll end up going through, we take about 1 hour. We kind of like have as like a team building event, we'll just like have a drink, go through the opportunities and see which opportunities were created that week. And we try to see what the lead sources and the campaign source is. And then if we see something that's marketing attributed or ABM attributed, we'll go and update the opportunity if it's within a certain time period prior to the opportunity. And that helps our ABM team honestly bump up their numbers. We're not trying to artificially inflate things by, cooking some of the data. Like we're like, hey, this campaign member was associated here. The primary campaign source is off because it was converted. The SDR created the opportunity through conversion. So that's why it's off. We go and audit it periodically. And that's something actually we're looking at automating in the second half of this year to make it a little less hands-on, get away from that Friday afternoon review. So
good idea. Yeah. But it can be tough, right? Because a lot of times it will find you'll engage with someone through your activities and whatnot. You'll create a meeting and all of a sudden additional people get added to the meeting. Yes. And it's not easy to then, and sometimes those additional people are the decision makers and whatnot. And from a marketing, obviously from a sales standpoint, you want to talk to them, but from a marketing standpoint, you may also want to be supplying them with more information and campaigns. Have you been able to tackle that at all?
That one's a little challenging because it really relies on, either the contact, like a seller adding someone to the contact role and the opportunity, which you can't always rely on that. You do need a system, but what we've typically, like our ABM marketers have been great in doing is when they have these events, like say, for example, like they invite someone to the call to taco night or something like that, or they have a call that they're sitting in with the SDRs on, they'll give us a list. So even if they have a meeting at an event and 2 other people show up, they'll give us a list and be like, hey, this person accompanied them at this account. We can automatically MQL them when we upload them in our import. And that'll automatically kick off that whole process to add them to the contact role. So as long as someone tells us that they attended something, we can see it. Obviously activities like Zoom calls, it's a little harder to track, but anything that we have, like where marketing is present and owning, we're pretty solid on.
Nice. Okay. That's great. So any other fun campaigns, and this is less on the operations side, but more on the marketing side, you mentioned taco building nights, any other fun strategies that you guys have gone through to move people down the ABM funnel?
Great question. So a few, I mean, we have like we're really, this is a new thing we've been doing the last 6 months is like, the more, the intimate events. So like we have, I think just earlier this week, we had 2 whiskey nights, which I was not invited to, unfortunately, but we had 2 whiskey nights. We have a few more, like, we're experimenting with direct mailers. So seeing if we can, use, direct mailing. We're Happy Alice customers. So we want to see also if there's an opportunity for us to use gifting. So we try to use gifting wherever. Not where we want it to be right now, because I've seen I've seen some other organizations, people sharing on LinkedIn how they've used tools like Alice and Sendoso to really help with their ABM efforts, push things along. Other people are a little more reserved about gifting, but it's something we were looking to incorporate in H2. But we have tried in the past as well. And obviously this is in addition to some of our more traditional things. Like if we're at an event, we go after ABM accounts, we might have a separate dinner or cocktail party, things like that with them. So really the goal with our ABM accounts is to kind of really give them that white glove service when we're marketing to them, make it feel like a one to few experience, and really feel like they're, I don't want to say for lack of a better word, targeted by us, but that we really think there's a solid opportunity for them to become customers of ours.